The Retroid Pocket 2 Plus is hands down the best retro handheld that you can buy under $100. There is no competition that I have seen for it. Now, the Retroid Pocket 3 is out, and now it's competing with devices like the Anbernic RG353P since they're much closer in price. But does it truly make the cut in 2020? The answer is yes. Introducing the Retroid Pocket 3. Let's dive right in. The exterior design consists of a smaller Nintendo Switch Lite, essentially. It looks a lot like it from the way that it's completely flat on the back, and just look at it. It's literally a Nintendo Switch Lite, but smaller, lighter. And now, personally, I really like this design and celebrate that Retroid went to a 16 by 9 screen because I'm usually not really much of a fan of 4 by 3. I find it much more comfortable to hold and use overall too, which is a big plus. On the front, you're going to get your usual set of buttons with a Nintendo layout for the ABXY buttons. The D-pad is a little bit clicky, but then you feel some resistance or mushiness when you click down. Strangely, I like that, and everything else is pretty good too, with the buttons feeling quite clicky and the thumbsticks feeling the same as the ones as on the Iron Odin, I would say. On the top, you're going to find your shoulder buttons, a sleep-wake button, a micro HDMI port, and your start and select buttons. Worst decision that they could have made with this device. Why on earth would they need to do this? This is the most questionable design choice that I have come across when it comes to any retro handheld whatsoever. But with that aside, on the bottom, you're going to get a micro SD card slot, USB-C, and a headphone jack. With the stereo speakers facing kind of towards the back, but they are technically bottom firing. On the right, there's your home button for Android navigation. On the left, there's your volume rocker. Overall, minus the start and select placement, everything else seems pretty good about this device. This device features a 4.7-inch 16 by 9 750 by 1334 IPS display that looks pretty decent. I would say that it looks pretty good. Now, the colors are nice on the screen, and it certainly is a huge upgrade from the Pocket 2 Plus, which I really appreciate. It's touch-enabled too, so it's great for navigating Android, even with gestures if you prefer. It's a fine display that I enjoy using, and I don't really have any complaints about it, honestly. Now, this device features a bottom-firing set of stereo speakers. Honestly, they just sound okay. They don't get very loud, so it's kind of hard to grasp how good they could sound. And this device features an A75 CPU with a Power VR GPU. My unit has 2 gigabytes of RAM, but you can get a unit with 3 gigs instead and 32 gigs of internal storage. This will also feature a 4,000 mAh battery here, which is a pretty big battery, I would say, for a device like this. But we're going to be putting these specs to the test in just a little bit. Now let's go ahead and talk about Android for a moment. This is running on Android 11, which is great, and it does come with the Play Store, like every Android device should. But overall, it feels like controlling an Odin since it's really just Android 11. It looks great, it performs great, and I'm free to do all of my shenanigans. Sure, using Android in landscape is still kind of awkward to me because it feels off having to reach with your thumb or using a whole hand to maneuver it, but it's fine. You can also use the controls to navigate Android, so it's all good. Now let's go ahead and talk about game performance, and we're going to be testing quite a few systems here. So let's begin with SNES. Playing Chrono Trigger on this device is going to be a breeze, truly. Any SNES game should run really well here. Now I am using the SNES 9X EX Plus emulator, and it's doing its job very well here. I really like how it performs here, and the same is true with other games like Link to the Past, for example, which run with no hiccups whatsoever. When it comes to N64 performance, using the M64 Plus FZ emulator, you get really good performance as well. So playing Super Mario 64, everything was upscaled and looked very sharp while still running incredibly well. It didn't matter what world I jumped into, performance was always the same with this emulator, and that's a great thing. However, I noticed that sometimes there are some graphical glitches that come up, but it's kind of rare enough that it doesn't really bother me much. Overall, N64 performance is nothing short of amazing on this device, and I think that if you want a good machine for N64, this is going to be a great place to look at. Next is PlayStation 1 with a DuckStation emulator, and as I expected, performance is beautifully handled. With Crash Bandicoot, you get exceptional performance here with no graphical glitches to mention. It was as flawless as I would want it to be, even with the resolution automatically upscaled by 3x just to match it to 720p, and it looks really sharp, like a game made much more recently. I think that you will have a really good experience with PS1 since you get to relive these games with higher graphical fidelity. However, this won't be the case for every single game since Crash did actually suffer from audio stuttering, so I would just do 2x for the most part since it should be able to handle that. Now this is when things start to get more challenging for this system. Let's go ahead and talk about PSP performance with God of War: Ghosts of Sparta. And this is where we see some performance limitations from this chip. We cannot play this game at 2x resolution, so we stick to 1x and a frame skip of 1 so that this game can run at a playable frame rate. Now, we do still encounter some issues with the performance as there are some stutters still, but I would still consider this to be mostly playable. I do want to stress that this device should be able to run almost any other PSP game just fine, even at 2x resolution. But God of War is just the standard for testing performance because it's so demanding. But it's good to know how far you can take PSP here with the PPSSPP emulator. Now, PS2 was a big challenge for this device to overcome, and I can safely say that PS2 just isn't playable on this system. It might be a lot to ask for a device that's this cheap, but it's still kind of disappointing. As you can see from the footage on screen, there is quite a lot of slowdown, and that's in both the sound and the performance itself. I tested out a more intensive game like Budokai Tenkaichi 3 and got pretty bad results. Same with the game that's much more tamed like Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. It was all just too slow to consider playable, honestly. So I would not get this system for PlayStation 2, but I guess that should be expected. But GameCube is kind of a different story. I tested out a simpler game like Naruto Clash of Ninja 2 and it ran okay through the Dolphin MMJR emulator on the Vulkan backend. I would consider this game to be totally playable, without a doubt, but you do get your stutters here and there. Twilight Princess straight up won't even load past the branding, so that game is out of the question here. Kind of odd, considering that the game did run, albeit poorly, on the Pocket 2 Plus. Super Smash Bros. Melee ran less than okay, as there were a lot of stutters, but eventually, after starting the game and entering a battle, it started to pick up, but I really would not get this for GameCube, as it's just not ready, in my opinion. I'm sure that either the community or Retroid will update the system eventually to allow for more performance, but right now, I wouldn't do it. And same goes for the Wii, using the same emulator. Performance is just abysmal with something like Skyward Sword. I tried tweaking the settings just a bit to make it run better, but it didn't really help much, if at all. I would also not consider the Wii to be playable here, and would not get the system for the Wii. GameCube, however, does have a chance to do better, so I might revisit the Pocket 3 if that does happen. So when it comes to battery life, we've got a winner here. This device has a pretty large battery, so it can easily last around 3 to 4 hours from my testing while gaming, but that does depend on what games I'm playing as well. So now I wanted to do a quick comparison between this device's biggest competitor, which in my opinion is the RG353P from Anbernic. Both devices are pretty cool, but I would argue that the Pocket 3 performs just a little bit better. It has a much nicer screen, comes with the Play Store, the setup is very easy, and the form factor is more ideal. The RG353P has grips around the back. It comes with a 4x3 screen, which a lot of people will prefer, and the buttons are certainly better on this one too. They both have their pros and cons, but I believe that the Retroid Pocket 3 is a better value because of the display and the extra performance. But the price tag is also nicer, coming in at $120 for this model, and the RG353P coming in at $135 instead. I did give the Anbernic RG353P somewhat of a negative review initially, because I believe that there were a lot of missed opportunities that the RP3 capitalizes on for less which is why I prefer it. So in conclusion, I really like the RP3, and I can strongly recommend it for PSP and below systems for the best experience, but I do wish that this had been pushed further to run GameCube and PS2 a little bit better. I think that this is something that could be possible with a software update, but we don't know that yet. So don't buy it with that expectation. Only buy it for what it is right now, a genuinely fantastic handheld that works really well. And while I don't think it's worth upgrading from the 2 Plus, I will say that I think that it is worth it if you are in the market for a new retro handheld and don't want to spend too much money. So with that said, thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the very end. I do very much appreciate that. Actually, I know that this one was a little bit of a longer one, but I believe that all of this information needed to be shared. Now, there aren't going to be any kind of affiliate links for this one since I don't think that it is available on Amazon, so no links for that. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram and on Twitch, and I also have other channels like the Tech Summit podcast, and I've also got a vlogging channel essentially where I post to whenever I feel like it. So links to everything down below. I would appreciate it if you followed me wherever you'd like. And you can even subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed this video. So with that said, this has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you for watching. I almost forgot my name for a moment, and until next time, enjoy.